Wonderful. Thanks. So, hello everyone, and thank you, Caroline, for that introduction, and thank you, Buslingo, for inviting me to present this webinar. I had the opportunity to visit Buslingo headquarters a couple of months ago, and I was very impressed by the platform they offer. So I'm delighted to be here today and to be part of this episode of Ideas by Interpreters. And of course, a warm welcome to all of you who are listening. Thank you for taking the time from your busy schedule, and thank you for your interest in this topic. So the main purpose of this webinar today is to share very specific business and professional practices that have helped me as a freelance interpreter to grow my business, my clients, my income throughout the 18 years that I've been working as a freelance interpreter. So during the presentation, I will give you very specific tools that you can use in your everyday life as an interpreter with very specific examples that can help you to manage your career as a freelance interpreter and to make you a happy interpreter. And I say happy for a reason because I've met colleagues who love what they do as interpreters, but sometimes they get frustrated with the administrative or the business part of our job. And I don't want you to get to that point. I want you to be a happy interpreter. And healthcare interpreting, especially, which is what I do mainly, it's a wonderful career. I love it, and I want you to love it as much as I do. So after the presentation, you will receive several handouts that you can use as reference in your work, and I will mention those handouts as we move along with the presentation.
Perfect. Sounds great. Thank you for being here, Judith. We're really excited.
Thank you. So yeah, I'll start. When I think about freelancing, these are the images that come to my mind. In the upper left corner is a picture of my car, which is an amazing Toyota Matrix. And in fact, yes, and I know it's kind of silly, but if you are an interpreter, of course, you can do video, you can do phone interpreting, but you will also do sometimes face-to-face and in-person interpreting, and you need reliable transportation. It could be a car, it could be public transportation, but you need to be on time. Being on time is critical. And also you see some pictures here of receipts, invoices, 1099s. Part of freelancing is doing administrative work. You will have to do invoicing, you will have to file receipts, you'll have to do your taxes. Well, maybe your accountant will do your taxes, but you have to be on top of it. And I think that's critical to be successful in your business. So sometimes people say, well, am I really a freelance interpreting or more like an employee? So I'm not going to go into the details of the differences, but I created like a list and that you can check. And actually, this is a handout. So I'm going to go down this checklist here on the left corner. And I want you to answer yes or no after each item. So do you have business cards? Do you have a complete LinkedIn profile? Do you have your own website? Do you have a business license? Do you have a separate business account, separate from your regular checking account? Do you have a professional headshot? Do you have a list of your fees for your services? And do you have liability insurance? If you answer yes to all of these, you probably are a freelance interpreter because you're telling me that you're operating like a business. You have a business license and you have marketing materials to market your services. You have a website, you have business cards, you have a profile on LinkedIn, etc. So the idea of today's workshop is to help you define what freelancing means and also how to succeed in that. So a lot of people, when they start freelancing in the interpreting world or translating as well, and even when you have been doing it for a while, they have basically two questions. How do I find work? And how much should I charge? Or what should be my rates? So the purpose of this presentation is to answer these two questions that I think are very important, because if you don't have any work, you cannot have a successful business, and you need to know what to charge because you need to make a living as well. Obviously, because certain laws, I will not talk about specific rates, but I'll talk about general things that you can think about when you think about the rates that you should charge. So I'll start with how to find work, and what you need to have to find your clients. So obviously you can contact clients directly, and you can also network. So when I talk about contact clients directly, you can just go online and look at the clients that you would like to work for. It could be translation and interpreting agencies. It could be hospitals and clinics that you can contact directly. It could be any kind of company, private company. You can work for nonprofits. I've done a lot of work for nonprofits, and I love working for them. Maybe you want to work for school districts or in social services agencies and other clients. There's a wide array of other clients that you can work with. So you can contact to them directly according to your expertise, to your level of experience, etc. But I think that most of the time you will find clients by networking. Networking is huge. Here's a slide where I have actual pictures of real people that, thanks to them and networking, I was able to get some work. And then when I look back at my career, I would say that 60 to 70% of all my clients came from networking. So, and at the top, I have a couple of pictures of colleagues of mine. Bill Glasser, who is the president and owner of an agency here in California. I met him through a CHIA event. CHIA is the California Healthcare Interpreting Association. That was many years ago. And because I met him through an event that I think it was a workshop in person, I met this person, and this person then opened an agency, and I was able to work for that agency. Then I have a picture of my colleague, Curtis Draves. He is a court interpreter here in Northern California. And he's a very busy guy, so sometimes he gets requests for work that he cannot fulfill, and he recommends other colleagues. I do that too. Sometimes I get a phone call from a client, I cannot do the job, and I recommend my colleagues. And thanks to him, I was able to get a job at Pixar Animation Studios. I live nearby, so it was very convenient. And it was an interpreting job for human resources at Pixar. And also, I got a job at there's a small picture of a great restaurant here in Oakland where I live. And I was able to get a job there also for the restaurant. And I got free food as well. And at the bottom, I have a couple of images of professional organizations, the ATA, which is the American Translators Association, and the NCTA, which is the local chapter in Northern California of the ATA. And because I'm a member of these organizations, and because my name appears on their list, and I have a profile there, clients can contact ATA or NCTA, and they can find my name. And thanks to that, I was able to get a 3-week job one time at Apple. And also thanks to being a member of the local chapter NCTA, I was able to get translation and interpreter work through nonprofits and schools, which I really love to do. So what do you need to find work? You need a couple of things. You need to be professional, you need to be organized, you need to know how to network, and you have to be flexible. And I explain what I mean by these words. So professionalism means two things to me. It means that you have to get trained, you have to attend webinars like you're doing, so you're doing the right thing. You have to attend meetings in person, conferences, etc. And you have to get certified eventually. So for all of you who are medical interpreters, I really encourage you, if you are not certified, to be certified. Nowadays, we have 2 national certifications, the Certification Commission for Healthcare Interpreting and the National Board exam also. Some states have their own interpreting exams for social services and for healthcare. So depending on where you live, there might be a separate exam just for your state. For those of you who are interested in translation, the ATA, which is the American Translators Association, offers a national exam in different language combinations. And these exams are usually offered once a year in the state where you live. And it's a difficult exam to pass, but having an ATA certification, it's a big deal. It shows that you have a certain level of professionalism and expertise. Professionalism also means that you should join a professional organization. So depending on your budget, and having a business means to have a budget, you at least should join one or two professional organizations. If you're a healthcare interpreter and if you live in California, even if you're not in California, I strongly suggest that you become a member of CHIA, the California Healthcare Interpreters Association. They hold a state conference every year that's growing and growing. It's close to 400 people now, and it will be in Sacramento in March. So I strongly suggest that you become a member. If you're more in the legal interpreting industry, Najid is the association for you. And if you are a translator, but also an interpreter, the ATA is the national organization. The ATA has a division for interpreters, and it also has a medical division for translators and interpreters. The ATA membership is a little more pricey. I think it's about $190. So depending on your budget, you can choose which one. If you cannot afford an ATA membership, you can always join the ATA chapter in your state. I know a lot of states have ATA chapters. Certainly here in California, we have the Northern California Translators Association, NCTA, and there's also one in the South in San Diego, and Oregon and Washington have their own ATA chapters. And you can name these professional organizations in all your profiles. So it shows that you are really part of the profession. Professionalism also means that maybe you could join a professional organization of translators and interpreters in the country or in a country where the language of service that you work with is the official language. For instance, I am a Spanish interpreter, so I'm originally from Spain, and I joined an organization of translators and interpreters from Spain. So it gives me a different perspective because it gives me the perspective of a professional organization in a country where the official language is Spanish. You could Mexico has its own translators interpreters association. Actually, they put a great conference every year in Guadalajara, Mexico, at the end of November. But in any country, all these countries listed here have professional translators and interpreters associations that our memberships are open to people all over the world. This is actually a picture of all the translation and interpreting associations I belong to. It's like 3, 4, 5, 6. So that way I keep informed. I see what other states or people do. So it keeps me abreast with what's going on with the profession. Uh, I strongly recommend if you are not a member of any organization, to join one that has what they call a final linguist function. Some organizations, you can create a profile and you can create a profile of your services, and people can find you. Potential clients can find you. The ATA has that function, and all the ATA chapters have that function. And maybe I can try to show you here an example of these. So this is the website of the NCTA, which is the Northern California Translators Association. When you become a member, it's about $60 a year. You create your own profile. And here at the top, there's a tab that says Final Linguist. So let's say that I am a person that's looking for an interpreter. So I'm going to go to the NCTA website and I'm going to click on Find a Linguist. And I'll scroll down. And here, there's several information that I can select to find the perfect translator interpreter for me. For instance, I may be looking for an interpreter that can interpret from English into Spanish. Let me see, Spanish, pass it right here. And I can put other language combination, specialties. I can also select if I want this person to have a credential or certification. Sure, I want somebody who is certified in the medical field. I don't know who this person is, and see if I can get any hits. I have to click here. We have an extra layer of security. Perfect. And let's see what the returns are. So, oh, okay. Well, look, I'm there. That's my name. So people can find me here along with other colleagues. People can click my name and find my information, my email, my links to my LinkedIn profile, my Twitter, all my information, brief profile information of all the languages I interpret into and from, my credentials. They can also visit my website. So I strongly suggest that if you become a member, you become a member of an organization that allows you to create a profile so people can find you.
That's really cool. I'm sorry to jump in here.
No, that's cool.
Um,
That's okay.
I wanted to ask, so I know that that's for the local chapter here in
Yes.
Northern California. Is there like I know that there's a United States wide one, but do they
Yes.
have something similar where you can search for interpreters kind of all over the country that are part of that organization?
Correct. So the only one I can think about is the ATA, which is the American Translators Association. Even though they're called Translators Association, they have an interpreters division,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's national. And actually, there's people from abroad. So yes, absolutely. And actually, the local chapters like the one I just show you, the membership is open to people all over the United States. You don't have to live here to be a member. So people can find. So we have members from Nevada or Washington State or
Very
our
cool.
neighboring states.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes people post their profiles there. They become members. So their profiles are there. Or they might be in Southern California where there's no ATA chapter. And so if a client is looking for them, they'll find them there and maybe they'll hire them. So geographically, it doesn't matter much. But the ATA is the only one I can think about. The CHIA doesn't have this function. Unfortunately, the California Healthcare Interpreting Association does not have the find an interpreter function yet. Not sure they will in the future, but they don't.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a really cool feature. It's definitely
It
handy.
is absolutely yes, because if you're not there, because sometimes people. Well, I'm going to talk about this in a minute. When people are looking for anything, food, a restaurant, a mattress, anything, a computer, they go online. That's what people do
Yeah,
now.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, and it's hard to know where exactly to find, certified interpreters
correct.
all over the country, and it's definitely a useful tool not just for like language companies or people service
Mhm.
agencies that are looking for interpreters, but also, it gives the interpreters a way to kind of market themselves in it.
Absolutely. And the ATA also has the function that everybody who is a credentialed interpreter, medical or court, they can post that there. So definitely, I would say the ATA is the one place to find um, interpreters and translators at a national level.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yes, sure. So, well, that's what I was saying. So imagine that you're really hungry and you're craving Mexican food and you're in an area that you're not familiar with. So how are you going to find a Mexican restaurant? So you're going to go online, right? Or we're going to ask Siri or whatever. We're going to Google it. and we're going to go to Yelp and look at reviews. So same thing, if you are not online, you basically almost don't exist. That's how it is nowadays. So I encourage you to think about having your own website. And you think, well, it's just me. I'm not an agency. It doesn't matter. I'm just me. My business is just me. And I have a very simple website. You can do again, it depends on your budget. So you can have a very simple website with basic info about the services that you offer and the contact information. Or you can have something more sophisticated, more complete information, payment options, a button to your PayPal account so people can pay you directly that way. You can have a function where people can upload documents so you can give them quotes for services if you're translating, etc. So I started looking into that, and actually here's an example of some platforms that can help you create your website. Some people do it themselves, actually, and that's how I did it with Site Builder. So I created my own website myself with some help, but or if not, you can pay certain money and they can build a beautiful website for you. Also, being professional means nowadays that you should have a complete LinkedIn profile, and you should have short information, but it has to be detailed. Short doesn't mean just 2 lines, but it doesn't mean like a lot of information because people don't have time to read a lot. And if you think about when you look at other people's profiles, do you really read everything? You don't. But you have to be very specific, especially with the specialties. What do you specialize on? That's very important, and recruiters really look at that. You should have a professional picture. I'm a true believer in a professional headshot. And actually, one of the handouts that you will receive is an article about why is it important to have a good professional headshot. And also in the LinkedIn, you can include links to videos or articles that you wrote. And also don't forget to name the languages that you interpret for. Sometimes people have says interpreter, but they don't say what languages. And when people are looking for an interpreter, the first thing they're looking is Spanish interpreter or Russian interpreter or Chinese. So that should be at the top. Don't forget to put the languages of service. Also, you should start getting or thinking about getting a business license. This is very easy. This is a picture of my business license. So I went down to the city of Oakland. That's where my business is. And you just fill out a very easy form. You pay a fee. It's not a lot. And they give you this piece of paper that is your actual business license. Once you have the business license, all you have to do is once a year pay city taxes, which is not a lot of money. It's based on your income, and it's not, it might be, let's say, between $60 and $150 a year. So it's totally worth it. Another thing why this is important is that sometimes uh, if you're ever audited by the IRS, I doubt it, but if you are, this clearly shows that you are a business. And here also, when you get your business license, you can create your business name and whatever you want it to be. Professionalism also means continuing education. So as a real professional interpreter, you need to attend or participate in workshops, webinars, and you can also list those on your resume or on your LinkedIn page. Like in 2018, I attended all these continuing education events. When you become certified, you are required to attend continuing education workshops and events to fulfill your requirements of continuing education, because you will have to prove every 2 or 3 years that you are up to date with what the profession requires of you. And also, and most importantly, all these workshops, especially obviously the ones in person, are networking opportunities. And I'm going back to what I said a few slides ago. Networking is what's going to bring you work and clients. And I added this here. Professionalism also means to admit and correct errors. Certainly, throughout my careers, there have been times that I made errors, and maybe when I'm interpreting. And as you know, if you follow the protocols, when you commit an error, as soon as you realize, you will say something like this. Speaking as the interpreter, I would like to say that instead of saying right elbow, I said left elbow, and that shows that you're a professional. But sometimes we commit other kinds of errors. Maybe we made a mistake in the scheduling and we double booked, or maybe we had a conflict with another interpreter at some appointment, things like that. So I think that you should always acknowledge that you made a mistake. I think that shows that you're a true professional, and get along with everybody. Sometimes when you're freelancing, you're a lot on your own, and sometimes people can be a little mean and gossipy, and that's not good. I don't like to gossip about other colleagues and other things. So do your job the best you can and act in a professional manner. Being professional also means to stay informed of what's going on in our industry. So I encourage you to read some publications and articles. Here you have two images of the ATA Chronicle. So if you are an ATA member, you will receive the Chronicle, which is a great publication that they do about 4 times a year, I'm guessing. And at the top, you see the Translorial, which is the Northern California Translators Association journal, which we publish about twice a year. Another thing that you can do is that if you are a good writer, you don't have to be an excellent writer. You can write articles and submit them to these journals, and they will be happy to review them and publish them. And this is a great way to share with colleagues that you wrote an article about anything about the industry, and it looks really good in your resume. Also, watch videos from colleagues, instructors, etc. Another thing you can do is to follow professional organizations on social media. I certainly do that, especially on Twitter, or you can do it on Facebook. So on Twitter, for instance, I follow most of all the ATA chapters, interpreters that I admire, other organizations that have to do with interpreting translation here and abroad. So that way I know what's going on in the field and up to date. So another thing that you need to find work and to succeed as a freelance interpreter is that you have to be organized. If you're not organized, you're going to be overwhelmed. And being overwhelmed leads to frustration. And again, I said at the beginning that I wanted to be a happy interpreter. So I suggest that you have a separate business bank account. So you go to the bank and says, I want to open a separate business account. That would be under your business name. And every time you get paid, you should save about 25 to 30% of each paycheck and put it on that business account. Because when April comes around and you have to do your taxes, they'll want part of your income. Because remember, as a freelancer, you'll get a check or money that doesn't have any deductions. You're not paying Social Security, you're not paying state disability, etc. And that 25, 30% is that portion that you should save for every paycheck to be ready when tax time comes around. So you're not overwhelmed and says, oh my God, I owe all this money now. So by doing it little by little, it's not so stressful, and you'll have the money ready to pay your taxes. When you're a freelancer, usually you have to pay taxes quarterly. So your accountant or yourself, you do your taxes, calculate more or less how much money you think you're going to make in a year. And then they calculate what your quarterly taxes are, and you pay them, in April, in June, in September, and in January. Also, being organized means that you should create like a tracking system for invoicing. So every time you do a job, and you can and actually this is a handout that I have of an example of how I track my jobs. Buslingo and other platforms are great. A lot of this work you don't have to do. It's already done automatically for you. And a lot of agencies now, I would say that 50% of them, the invoicing is done through platforms or portals, and it's very straightforward and easy. But I would say there's still 50% of agencies still require a traditional invoice that you have to create and email to them. So, and then if you are busy, and hopefully you are, there's a moment that says, oh, did I send that invoice? Did they pay me? Where's that check? So I created an Excel file, and that's actually a handout that you will get where you can see a job there. And I colored it, says, oh, they pay me. If they pay me, I color it in green. I write the check number. So that way I know who pays me and who doesn't. Otherwise, believe me, you will forget to invoice people and you don't want to lose any money. And or you will fall behind and get frustrated. So this is an example. So I put the date of when I did a job, the job description, it was an interpretation. I put the name of the agency. Here, since we can't talk about rates, I just said something very outrageous, $1 million. I sent my invoice on February 2nd. They paid me on the 10th, and this was the check number. So that way I know that that job has been paid. And for the ones that have not been paid, but I send the invoice, I color them in a different color. So that way, I see quickly, oh, okay, these people owe me money or they don't, everything looks good, I'm up to date, etc. Being organized also means that you should create a system for your receipts. This is a picture of this filing system that I have for all my receipts. A good thing about interpreting is that you can write off a lot of stuff and for your business when you do your taxes. And so I have these filing folders that I have in this box, and I have them labeled through different categories. And then every time I have a receipt, I put that receipt in that folder. So when taxes come around, then I add all the receipts by the different categories because my accountant wants it that way. Otherwise, again, you will have to pay a lot of more money to your accountant to do that job. And if you look at this picture on your left, these labels that you see, actually that's a handout for you too. So I created a handout with all these little tabs. So you can cut it and you can put it in your filing folder. So parking, gas, bank charges, travel expenses, association dues, all those things are write-off that help you to reduce your tax liability. So it's very important to be organized and to keep all your receipts because it will help you with your taxes. Mileage is a big deal. If you do on-site interpreting, you should be very detailed with the mileage. Mileage is a significant tax deduction. It's actually pretty big. And it's not enough for the IRS people that you write down the odometer numbers at the beginning of the year, January 1st, and at the end of the year, December 31st. No, you have to write it for each job that you do. In case you get audited, they want to know a specific. Okay, so you say that in January 25th, you went to Fremont, California to interpret. Well, I want proof of that. So you can use, there's a lot of apps for that, like MileIQ, or you can be very traditional and use, write it down on some kind of piece of paper that you have in your car. But you have to have that, and then you add it up at the end of the year, and then you submit that with your taxes. This is an example of how I track my mileage. Sometimes I do it with an app, sometimes I write it down. So again, I put the date, the job, a specific job that I did, the odometer, beginning of the end. I also put there if I'm getting reimbursed for that or not. Obviously, if I'm getting reimbursed, the IRS will not reimburse me. Sometimes I'm getting reimbursed at a lower rate of the IRS, so the IRS will reimburse me for the rest. So you have to be very detailed with this. They want detailed information. I know it's a lot of work, but it's something I get in the car every morning and I do it. It's part of my job. Networking, again, attend workshops in person. Webinars are excellent. I'm so happy there are so many webinars out there. When I started 18 years ago, there were no webinars whatsoever, and there were very little workshop opportunities. But now there's a lot of webinars. It's very convenient. But also encourage you to attend workshops in person, because that way you'll meet colleagues in person and you'll be able to network and also enjoy yourself. Also, I encourage you to attend at least one conference a year. So, depending on your budget, I'm sure that maybe in the state where you live, there are some conferences. So, if you're a healthcare interpreter, the conference to attend now is the CHIA conference in California. If you are in California, in Northern California, it will be easy for you. It will be in Sacramento in March. And participate in social events. A lot of professional organizations have happy hours and other events where you can just go and relax. Sometimes our job is very lonely. And sometimes we need to, I don't know, just go and have lunch or have a drink or just chat with other people about other things that don't have to do with our work necessarily, and with people that do the same thing that we do. Any questions right now? We'll have time at the end for questions, but this is basically the first part, and I'll just talk about rates, and then we'll
Yeah,
open it up. Hmm.
sorry, Judith. So there's a couple of questions here actually.
Sure.
And so the first one I'm actually not sure of myself, but do you know if federal interpreters also have to have CEU requirements? I imagine that they do, um, but I wasn't sure if you had any information on that.
Sure. So I'm assuming they are talking about court interpreters who are federally certified. If that's the case, yes, they have to. All court interpreters, regardless of their if they're state or federally certified, they have to do continuing education. For court interpreters, it's a different system. They're called CINCI credits that the states issue. I think it's at the state level. Certainly, it is here in California. So they also have to attend workshops, conference, etc., and accumulate or accrue certain amount of. But yes, everybody who's certified nowadays, translators and interpreters, they have to submit continuing education. Each organizations have their own system. So for medical interpreters, CCHI have their own system for continuing education credits. ATA translators have their own system they have to follow, and the court interpreters have their own system, federal and state. So the answer is yes.
Yeah, I kind of thought so. Thanks for answering
Sure.
that. And then the next question, I know you're going to talk about rates right now, but what's kind of it will vary, of course, depending where the job is,
Mm-hmm.
where you are, but
Sure.
any idea of sort of average rates for mileage, I guess?
Oh, that's a great question. So for mileage, so let me see. Let me go back here. So it depends on where you live, but not as much. So a good, well, let me go back. The IRS has a mileage rate that they publish every year. So January 1st, in about, geez, 3, 4 weeks,
Wow, yeah.
they'll publish the IRS rate for 2019. And you can just Google IRS mileage rate and it'll be right there. And this year is about 54 cents, which is what appears here in this slide. So when a client contacts you and they say, do you charge mileage? You have two options. You can say, yes, I charge the IRS rate. Is that okay with you? And they might say, sure. Or they might say, no, that's a little too high. And then you can just charge whatever you want, really. And for instance, sometimes the agencies that don't pay the IRS rate, I charge them 38 cents, which is what included here is actually a rate that I charge. So, and some agencies, they don't. Some agencies will tell you, or clients will tell you, sorry, we don't pay mileage unless you travel more than 20 miles from your house. And then you just take it or leave it. You know,
Right.
again, if you're freelancing, you're not obligated. So it's a, you can charge whatever you want, but always have the IRS rate as a guide for you to know what to charge.
That's smart. Yeah. One more question before we kind of move
Sure.
on to the next section here. Average pay for an hourly medical interpreter. I know that that's obviously
Mhm.
going to vary based on certification, based on experience, based on location, based on the assignment, but something you might like an average.
So, okay, so I know that that's a very typical question and people want to know, but according to antitrust laws, US antitrust laws, we cannot discuss a specific rates. I cannot give you a specific number. So I cannot do that as a member of the ATA or NCTA. However, and this is what I'm going to do in the next 5 minutes, I can give you guidelines
Mm-hmm.
for you to reach or come up with a rate that makes sense to you because there's different variables like you said, Caroline, and there's other things that you have to take into account. So if it's okay with you, we can move on and then I can probably
Yeah,
answer
yeah.
that question
For
in
sure. Yeah. Let's
a
move
better
on.
way.
Just
Sure.
the
So
interest of time.
actually, that's how it is. How do I set my rates? And so I think you should start by asking how much is your time worth per hour? Start there. How much would I like to get paid by the hour? And think about a range. And sometimes people talk about a happy rate. If somebody would come and say, hey, I'm going to give you this amount per hour, does that make me happy? Or would that make me like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I'm pretty happy with that? Or would that make me sad and unhappy? So that's a guide. And I know that can vary by person, but that's something that I would start right there. I certainly do that. Especially because a lot of people now, for especially translators, they're not charging per word, they're charging more flat fees. So another question you should ask is how much time will you dedicate to interpreting? Is it going to be a full time, part time? How many hours a week? Some of you may think, well, that's not relevant. It doesn't matter. It's true, it may not matter, but it's something that you might have another part time job and maybe interpreting is only 10 hours a week. So, what would make you happy? What would make it worth it for you to dedicate 10 hours a week to interpreting? What amount of money per hour? Like you said, Caroline, your level of experience is important. Are you certified or no? Once you're certified, you're going to say, hey, I'm certified, so my rate is such and such. For instance, you might work for an agency or client, and your rate is, whatever, $1 million. And then when you become certified, you can charge 1.5 million because now you're certified, and you can certainly do that. And you have to have in mind what your expenses will be. So you say, well, I'm going to charge so much per hour, but I'm going to have car expenses or gas expenses, my phone, the travel time. You have to deduct that and see, okay, I'm going to end up with so much money an hour. Does that make me happy? Is that good? Yes or not. Now, what I encourage you to do, and this is an exercise for the person who asked this question, I encourage you to do the following. Go to your computer, open a Word document, and create what I call a rate sheet ready. So you're going to say, I, the interpreter, Jennifer, want to get paid so much an hour, and I want 2 hour minimum, or I want an hour minimum. And you have to specify according to assignments. Not all assignments are the same. You might be asked to do simultaneous interpretation. You might be asked to do consecutive. You might be asked to interpret just for one person or 50 people, etc. So those are going to be different. So actually, one of your handouts is a sample of this rate sheet that you can use as a guide, as a template. So when you look at it, you're gonna see that you can put your name, your business name, your certifications, and the most important thing you have to put is the areas that you cover. When an agency calls you, the first thing they ask you is how much do you charge and what areas you cover. Where do you go? Where do you travel? So you have to have that ready. You can put it there, and then you can say, well, I charge so much for these kinds of appointments, follow-up appointments, simple doctor visits, so much. I charge so much for medical legal evaluation, a little more. Other types of appointments, nonprofits, education, IEPs, community, focus groups, so much. And I want 12 minimums or not. And then you have to list the amounts there. And then, for instance, if it's an appointment after 6 p.m., you can charge more. If it's an appointment on a Saturday and Sunday, you should charge more. You should also indicate what your mileage rate is there. Also, you should specify if you have a minimum. I want a minimum of so much money for this appointment. If it's like an all day, so as well, I want a minimum of 4 hours or 3 hours. And I cannot tell you which one is the right one because I'll do it one way and another person will do it a different way. Another thing is that depending on the language that you interpret, you can charge more. And this is a reality. I know that we are all good and it doesn't matter. But for instance, there are a lot of Spanish interpreters out there. So there's a lot of competition. So maybe the rates won't be that high. But for instance, I know where I live, if you're Vietnamese or Japanese interpreter, you can certainly charge more because there are very few of you and you might be in high demand or Arabic even. So that's another thing to have in mind, to take into consideration. And also you should also put there if you have any cancellation fees. What happens if the appointment is canceled with less than 24 hours notice? How much will you charge for that? So start by creating that and then start putting numbers in there, real numbers. And you're going to start seeing, yeah, this is reasonable. This sounds good. And again, this is what I just explained, different rate scales for weekends or after hours, evenings, for different kinds of interpretation. And mileage, if you will charge it, again, you can charge, or if you don't charge any mileage, write it down in your mileage little booklet, and then when taxes come, you will get reimbursed for that. Another thing that you can do is you can talk to colleagues that you trust in person and not in these venues because we cannot talk about specific rates. But you can certainly talk. That's why I encourage you to join a professional organization, go to events, and then once you have colleagues that you trust, you can ask them, hey, how much you charge for this? And some people will tell you. There's some websites like or sites like pros.com. Some of the interpreters translators, they publish their rates there. So they're public. You can also see that. And also, when we talk about rates, you should be flexible. And by flexible, I mean the following. Let's say that, are you willing to travel? Are you willing to accept jobs that may not pay your desired rate? And some interpreters, certainly I have colleagues say, no, my rate is this one, and that's it. I will not change it. Or some of my colleagues says, I only go to San Francisco and the area around where I live. I won't travel more than 25 miles away. That's perfectly fine. You don't have to. You are your own business. You can do whatever you want, really. But these are different scenarios that I've gone through, and I put them here as a teaching lesson. So let's say an agency calls me and says, Judit, can you please cover an appointment that's 120 miles away round trip? Wow, that's really far. So I can say, no, I'm sorry, it's not worth it. But I can also say, hey, sure, but can you pay me additional hours? Can I get a 4 hour minimum? And so I'll do it, and maybe the agency will take that into consideration. Oh, Judy was really great. She covered that appointment that we had a hard time covering. So they'll call you more often, certainly. Or so again, you can say, can I have a minimum and can you pay me mileage and travel time? If they say no, well, it's no, but they might say yes because they really want to cover that appointment. But again, you can say no, and that's fine. It's totally fine too. And another scenario is like, oh, we have a job to interpret at a restaurant for human resources. We pay 1 million. I know that your rate is 1.2 million, but we can only pay 1 million. Sometimes you will hear that from agencies. And a lot of interpreters will say, well, no, I'm sorry, I will not do that. And that's totally fine. And I really encourage people to keep their rates the way they are. But occasionally, you might think, well, this might be an interesting job. You know, it might say It might lead me to other job opportunities. And it might be something that you enjoy. And this happened to me. I was offered a job at a restaurant. I love restaurants. I'm a foodie. I love the culinary industry. And I said yes. It didn't pay what I wanted, but it was pretty close. And it led to other job opportunities. I had great fun. They would feed me every time I would be there. And it's something that you can enjoy. And it's important to do appointments that are meaningful and they make us happy as well. And you should include that in your life as an interpreter. So again, the pay might not be great, but this appointment is near where I live. It will look good in my resume, that I interpret in human resources. So it's something I've never done. It's not that difficult. So it can lead to other jobs. So always think that way. So, and another thing is that sometimes you get a phone call and you think, is that agency, will they pay me? Because sometimes agencies don't pay, believe it or not, or they take forever to pay. So ask your colleagues, have you ever worked for this agency? There's a website that's called Payment Practices that for less than $30 a year, you can check the reputation of some agencies. This is set up by the person who was the treasurer of the ATA for a long time, and it's a great source. And one thing that you can do is that if you accept a job with an agency that you're not familiar with, you can create a service agreement. It's like a mini contract where you say, I, Judit, will go on this date, I'll interpret for 2 hours, I will charge this money, and I want to be paid in 30 days. And you sign it and they sign it. And actually in your handouts, there's a copy of that service agreement. So you can use it as a template if you want to. And I think that's pretty much all I have. So I'm be really happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, so let's thank you so much for presenting. This has been extremely useful, I'm sure, to a lot of the people listening here, and to myself. So I just wanted to read a couple of the questions since we're a little bit
Sure.
short on time. So let's see which ones I can get. One of the interpreters or listeners here asked if you were talking about this presentation in regards to your own business or for work with a company, and correct me if I'm wrong. I think it applies to both, but more so in the freelance realm. So it's your own business, right?
Correct. Yeah. So all this information is me, Judith Marin, working as a freelance interpreter for agencies and clients. So when I say that I have my own business, it means that it's just me. My own
Right.
business is called Marin Language Services, and it's just me. I have a logo but it's just me. I'm me, the interpreter. So all the information is how I operate as a freelance interpreter. I,
Okay.
I'm,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's what I thought,
Okay,
but we
yeah.
can clarify
Mhm.
for that person.
Sure.
Um, so then, could you mention the name of the website again,
Mhm.
established by the ATA that tracks
Yeah,
agencies payments?
sure. It's called payment practices. So in this slide here is the second bullet point, payment practices.
Okay, great,
Yeah,
yeah.
and actually, if you're a member of, for instance, NCTA, the Northern California Translation Association, you can get a discount if you join payment practices, but it's about $25, $30 a year. It's totally worth it. And it's a forum where professional translators, interpreters comment in a professional way. It's not gossip. It's something that, people say, hey, I had a job, they pay me on time or they didn't pay me. So you can see the payment practices of different agencies and clients. Hmm.
Right. So a couple more questions
Sure.
before we end here. Um, let's see. Certification as a way to boost experience and to get
Hmm.
more jobs. I mean, I would say yes, but if
Yes,
if you want to elaborate on that a little bit.
absolutely. So being certified, I'll just talk about healthcare, okay, or medical interpreters.
Hmm.
So being certified does three things. Shows, because I remember when I started, there was only these certifications didn't exist. There was only a certification in the state of California, which is the one I did. So I remember going to an appointment, and a lot of people were not certified.
Right.
And and you say, well, I don't know, she's probably a great interpreter. She's probably a better interpreter than I am. I don't know. The only difference between that interpreter and me, the only difference, to be honest, if I don't know that person, is that I sign up to take exam. I went to a testing center and I took exam and I passed. So there's an accredited exam that's
Hmm.
been proven to be a valid tool to measure my knowledge. So, for instance, if I apply for a job at Stanford hospitals and clinics as an interpreter, by the way, they're looking for interpreters. Um, they have two resumes, and they said, "Oh, this person took the exam, this person didn't." Even if they don't know us, which one would they select? They'll select the person who's certified because they know that the person went through that process.
Right. It's another
Yeah,
level of standardization and
correct.
kind of proving that you're up to a certain level of
Right. And you'll feel proud about yourself and you can charge more. It shows that you're professional. It shows that you care. And
right.
when you hire someone a profession, you want someone who thinks that cares about what they do. And that's
Yes,
what it shows.
somebody who's passionate, somebody who
Correct.
goes the extra step. Um,
Correct.
so just to kind of tie this off here, I got some questions on, is the exam easy to pass? There's different exams that you can take out there, but I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to point out that we're going to be actually speaking with CCHI executive director next week on Tuesday,
Wonderful.
the 18th. Yeah, we're going to be sending out an announcement and a registration link to everybody. So you'll get that. There's going to be more information there. They're going to be talking about their exam process, but also this really interesting new campaign they have for languages of lesser diffusion. So
Mm-hmm.
we all know in the industry, or at least it's a common issue that it's kind of difficult to get certified in more diffuse languages. So
Yes.
the CCHI organization is trying to launch a study that's going to make it more possible for languages of lesser diffusion to get certified. So please tune in next week, same time, 11 a.m. PST. It's going to be episode 9 of Ideas by Interpreters, and we're going to be talking with Natalia Mitareva, the CCHI Executive Director. Yenta, tell your friends, tell everybody, and that's kind of, we're wrapping up now. So let's thank Judith for taking the time. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure everybody here has learned a lot. We'll be sending out some handouts that Judith gave us via email with the recording of the webinar as well, probably tomorrow. So yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time out of your day, and I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you, Judith. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.